So before learning anything, we need to know what is a Python. Okay, if you see, okay, on screen, so if you see it, there is something called a definition of a Python basically. Okay, so I will not get into deep. I'll just make you these things simple. Okay, so what is the definition says? Definition says that what is a Python? Python is an interpreted general purpose and a dynamically typed programming language. Okay, forget about garbage collection basically. Okay, we'll not discuss garbage collection. If you see, there are three words that are there as a new. People who are not aware of IT, okay, or any other programming language, if you see what is a Python, okay, Python is also a object oriented program, okay, which will keep it as a, but basic definition of a Python is interpreted general purpose and a dynamically typed. Okay, there are three words to define a Python basically. Okay, we'll go ahead and see them one by one. Okay, right. And now, okay, we'll go ahead and see interpreted. But before getting into interpreted, I will go ahead and give one simple example to make things easy. Okay. Now, let's say, okay, I have a Chinese friend. Okay, he visited my house. Okay, my parents does not. Okay, Chinese. My Chinese friend does not know either Telugu or any other language except Chinese. Okay, my parents does not understand Chinese or English. Okay, they only understand Telugu. Okay, what should be there in order to make the communication happen between them? Translator, right? Who is a translator? Who knows both Telugu and Chinese? Correct. So if Chinese friend is speaking something, there is a some mediator who actually translated Telugu basically, and whatever my friends are saying, that has to be translated to Chinese basically. Okay, what is there? With there is some translator or a mediator to do this. Same thing happens with every programming or any other tool in a real time basically. Okay. First, okay, just keep that this example in mind. Okay, now what does our machine understand? What does our processor do understand? Hmm? What does our processor do understand? Okay, in our machine there is a CPU or a processor, right? Processor do understand only binary. Okay, what does it understand? It understands zeros and ones basically. Correct? What it understands? It understands only zeros and ones basically. Okay. Whatever program we write, okay, I'll go ahead and give it simple example. Don't worry about it. I'll explain you what is this. This is a Jupyter notebook where we write the program basically. Okay. I'll just go ahead and write simple print basically. Print hello. Right. Okay, whatever we write it is basically in which language? English language. Okay, so whatever it can be understandable to everyone who knows English, right? Okay, so Python, we write it in high level language basically. What do you mean by high level language or general purpose, which understandable to human beings basically? Okay, whatever the code or piece of instructions that we write it understandable to humans, and then that is called a general purpose programming language basically. Okay, now, okay, whatever you do on our machine, right, who has to understand it? Computer has to understand it. Okay, computer means processor understands. Does it understand English? No, it does not understand English or any other common languages that are used by humans. What it understands? It understands only a zeros and ones basically. Okay. binary basically, or we can say bits basically. Okay. Now, how we are getting hello basically? Because there is an mediator called interpreter basically. Okay. Interpreter. What it is going to do? Whatever the program that you have, it is going to convert it to understandable code, which is binary. Whatever the program that you write it, that will convert it to machine understandable. Because if machine on processor does not understand code, what really happens? Does it process and gives output? No. Right? Same thing, program that we write it is going to translate into machine understandable code, which is zeros and ones, and that particular mediator is called interpreter in Python. Okay, what is interpreter is nothing but it is going to convert line by line basically. Okay, if you have 10 lines of code, basically it is going to convert each line by line into a machine understandable code, and machine do processor and give the output basically. Okay, so what is it? Interpreter. What is interpreter? Interpreter is a mediator which is going to act between a programming language and a processor basically. Got it right? So whatever the code we write it is understandable to humans, and this is called what? General purpose high level programming basically. If any programming language, if you go and write the code in human understandable language, then that is called a high level general purpose basically. Okay. Interpreter, you already know what is interpreter. In order to process program has to be machine understandable. Why? If machine does not understand it, it cannot process basically. Okay, so that is the thing with interpreted and general purpose. Okay, now there is one more terminology called dynamically typed programming language basically. Okay, before jumping into dynamic type programming language, we need about other things of programming. Okay. Now, let's say I'm actually discussing things in English basically. Okay, we do have a different languages in the in world, right? Okay, English, Hindi, Malayalam, there are a lot of Chinese, Japanese, and all those basically, right? Okay, does the rules for each and every language same? No. Each and every language has got its own rules to write and speak. Correct? Similarly, each and every programming language, if you see Python, right? Python has got a certain rules to write the code. Okay. And if you take Java or if you take any other SQL Server, any other programming language, they have got their own rules to write the code base. Okay. That rule in programming language is called a syntax. Okay, what it is called? In simple terms, in all general languages, right? English or Hindi, what we call it? We call grammar. Grammar, right? Grammar is nothing but certain rules to be followed while speaking or writing a certain language, basically. Similarly, each and every programming language has got a grammar. Grammar in IT or programming is called syntax. Syntax basically. What is syntax? Syntax, it says how to write a program basically. Okay, rules to write a program. Each and every programming its own rules to write a program. Okay, now I will go ahead and declare or define a variable now in Python. Okay, what is a variable? Variable is nothing but a container to hold the value. Okay, for example, I want to hold my salary into some variable basically. Okay, this is a variable, and I will go ahead and say $1,000. Okay, so instead of writing 1,000 every time, what I will do, I'll actually go ahead and refer the salary. Okay, instead of writing thousand every time, or whenever my salary changes, again I need to go, whenever there is 1,000, I need to update it to some other value basically. Instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use salary word which is referring to my actual salary basically. Okay, so for now remember what is a variable. Variable is nothing but a container to store the value basically. Okay, so in Python, how we will go and define a variable? What is the syntax? Syntax is name. Okay, what is the name? Salary is equal to 1000. Okay, what value, whatever value you want basically. Okay, right. So what is this is a syntax basically. Now if I go ahead and say some other syntax basically, so it is fine. Okay, I have ran it, and if you go ahead and say salary, it is point that it has got the value of 1000 basically. Now what is the syntax here? Syntax of defining a variable is name of your variable is equal to the value basically. So this is the syntax of defining a variable Python basically. This is a rule how to write basically. Okay. Now same thing. Okay. I'll go ahead and explain you in a SQL server basically. Okay. What is SQL server? SQL server is a database. Okay. SQL server is a database owned by Microsoft basically. Okay. Right. Now, why we need a database? What is the database?
To extract data.
Sorry. Yeah, to store the information basically, or to store the data basically. Okay. Why we need to store the data?
So that we can retrieve or
Why
manipulate
we
at
need to
later
store the
stage.
data? Sorry.
Yeah, we store data so that we can manipulate it or we can retrieve it when it is required.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So whenever we require, let's say very simple example. Okay. Let's say I have ordered something on Amazon or something, or let's say like I have registered myself in Facebook basically. Okay. While registering, my information has to be stored somewhere, so that when I come back and log in again, what it has to check? It has to check whether there is any person with this login name, I mean username and password, right? Correct or no? If I go and do some wrong password, generally it is going to say that it is a wrong password or a username is incorrect. How it is going to say that? Because it is stored, my information is stored somewhere basically. That somewhere is called a database. So when I come back and use my username and password, if it is correct, how it is going to verify that it is a correct? By cross checking with the information that was stored basically, right? So that is simple thing basically. So in order to, okay, database is nothing but to store the data basically. Okay, if you do not store the data, what happens? There is no reference basically. Correct? Okay. Simple thing with Amazon also. Correct? If you want to check your previous orders, what you will go ahead and do, you will go ahead and check orders basically. Where it is stored? It is stored in a database. The place information is called a database. Okay. Now let me. Okay. Fine. Okay. So I now we'll come back to again a variable basically. Okay, how we declare a variable, how we define a variable? What is the syntax in Python? Name of a variable is equal to value basically. Okay. Now same thing, I will go and explain it in a database basically. Okay, so this is a SQL server owned by a Microsoft basically. This is the data. Similar to programming languages, right? We have a different programming languages like Python, Java, C sharp, Ruby on Rails, and all this, right? Similar to programming languages, we have different databases. Okay, different databases like Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle. okay, NoSQL. These are different databases that are available similar to different programming languages basically. Okay, now I'll go ahead and show you how same thing we can go ahead and do it in a SQL server. Okay, now in order to declare a variable in a SQL server, okay, we have to go ahead and use declare. Okay, declare, and every variable has to start with at the rate in SQL Server. Okay, okay. I'll go ahead and say salary. Okay, data type. Okay, what do you mean by this? Data type. What is data type? Data type is nothing but what kind of a data that this particular variable should hold. Numbers, we have different types of data, right? Numbers, decimals, right? Strings. There are different data that is available in real time basically. So in SQL Server or in C Sharp or Java, we need to define, while declaring a variable, we need to define what kind of a data that this particular variable should hold basically. Okay, now set. What is it set? I am actually, in order to assign a value, we have to go ahead and use set keyword. Okay. Now set at the rate salary is equal to 1000. Okay. Now in order to see, I have to go ahead and say select at the rate salary. Okay. So what is this? This has got its own syntax for same thing we have done in Python. If you see Python, what we have done, we simply set salary is equal to 1000 basically. Okay. This is the syntax in Python basically. But coming to SQL Server or in Java or C Sharp basically, okay, what we have to do? We have to use the keyword or a word called declare space. I have to go ahead and say at the rate basically. Every variable in SQL Server has to start with the at the rate, and we have to mention the data type. What do you mean by data type? I have to say that this particular salary should hold only a numbers basically. Okay. What if I do not go ahead and mention int? What happens? It is saying that syntax incorrect. Okay, so what is the rule? Rule is that if you want to declare a variable in SQL Server, you have to, by mandatory, you have to mention the data type basically. Correct? Okay. So tell me which one is easy, this one or Python? Python is easy. Why? Because if you see the syntax in Python is easy when compared to sequence, right? Okay, this is one of the reason why Python is becoming popular nowadays basically. Why Python? Why people tend to learn Python? Because it is easy to learn and easy to write the program in Python basically. One good example is just now I have declared a variable basically. Okay, what is the syntax of declaring a variable? For example, salary, just a name of the variable, salary is equal to 1000. That's it. Okay, it's very easy, right? It's very easy. But when you take the SQL Server, right, what are all things that you need to remember? You need to follow some sequence. First, you need to remember declare. Okay, if you do not remember and you miss E, right, what happens? Syntax basically. Okay, because you have to use correct declare basically, correct word. And if you meet int also, it is going to say that it is an incorrect syntax basically. Okay, right. So now same thing we have done in SQL Server and Python. Which syntax is easy? Python basically. Okay, so that is the one of the advantage of people going and learning the Python basically. Okay, what is the advantage? Syntax. Syntax is nothing but what? The rules to write a program basically. Rules to write a program in Python is way better than other programming languages, and that is the reason why people tends to learn a Python basically. Okay, remember syntax. Okay, now we know what is a syntax. Syntax is nothing but a rule, and syntax in Python is easier when compared to other programming languages. Okay. Now, okay. Now let's come back to again our definition basically. If you see the definition, what we have seen Python is an interpreted high-level general purpose programming language that we know it basically, right? The program we write it, if it can be understandable to human beings, then that is called general purpose. That I already told you basically. Okay, right. And the main thing is dynamically typed programming language basically. What is Python? Python is a dynamically typed programming language basically. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and give a simple example. Same thing, similar to salary, I'll go ahead and declare equal to, let's say, 60. Okay, I have declared and I want to see what exactly is. We have got A. Okay, right. Now, okay, fine. Now, what I will do is I'll go ahead and update my age to 6, or yes. Now, what will be the value for age? We updated it to be basically to take the character space. Now, same thing. Let me go and do it here also. Tell me, will it work? It is going to throw us an error stating that there is a conversion error. Why? Because if you see here, what is this? Int. Integer is nothing but it is going to take only a numbers. Okay. But if you see it, what is the value that we have? I say strings, characters. That is the reason why it has thrown us an error. Okay, what is this behavior is called? This behavior is called a statically typed programming language. That means whatever the data type that you mentioned, only that data, that kind of a data. For example, I have mentioned int. So only numbers has to be passed to this particular age. If you go and pass any other values, or if you try to say any other value apart from numbers, it is going to throw us an error basically. Okay, why? Because what is the syntax? Integer basically. Okay, now but if you see in Python what exactly happened at any time. Okay, I'll go ahead and now earlier it is 16, now I have given 16 in what, in a string format basically. Again I'll go ahead and age is equal to, I'll go ahead and say 16.5. Will it give me any error? No, it is not going to give us any error. So your variables in Python can, or objects in Python, okay, can, or variables in Python can take any kind of a value, or any kind of a object can be assigned to your variables. So this behavior is called dynamically type programming language. Whereas if you see here, like same thing happens in Java. What is this? You cannot go ahead and give any other value except integer value basically. Now if I go ahead and say 16.5, okay, what happens? It is going to take only a 16, not zero point 0.5. Why? Because I have asked it to take only numbers, not decimals basically. Okay, right. So what is this behavior is called statically typed programming language basically. Okay, because whatever the, while declaring a variable, what you have mentioned it that it should take only a numbers basically. Okay, so it will only take a numbers. If you give any other values, it is not going to take those values basically. Okay, what is this behavior is called statically typed programming language. And when you see here, what is this called? This is called a dynamically typed programming language. Python is a typed programming language. Why? Because at any given time, variables in Python can take any kind of it. Okay, earlier if you see example, right? Age I have taken 16, again age I have taken to be 16, here 16.5. So same variable is taking a different values. What is this behavior is called? Dynamically typed programming language. Okay, so if you notice now, we have successfully finished the definition of a Python. Okay, what is a Python? Python is a highly interpreted, high level, general purpose and a dynamically typed programming language. So there are three terms which we have successfully discussed basically. Okay, we also discussed what is a syntax. What is a syntax? Where to write a program. Okay, each and every programming language has what its own rules, and that is called a syntax. Okay, if you see Python syntax is way better than other programming languages. So if something is easy, what generally we do, we will try to learn the things which is better, easy, and that is the one advantage of Python. Okay, Python syntax or way of writing a programming in Python is easier when compared to other programming languages, and that is the reason why people tends to learn Python basically. Okay, and also, okay, this is one of the advantage basically. What is that? Syntax. Okay, easy, easiness. In simple terms, Python is easy. Why people say Python is easy? Because the way of writing or way of coding in Python is easier when compared to other programming languages basically. Okay, now what is the other advantage of Python? What is the advantage of Python? Yeah, easy. That is one advantage. Can you tell me the other advantage? Yes, syntax and all those are whatever we discuss. Syntax is nothing but the way of writing the code base. What is the other advantage? Okay, right. Okay, Python is an open source. It's an open source. What do you mean by open source? Open source is nothing but we do not need to buy any license, or we do not need to buy or purchase anything to make use of it. Okay, if you want to write the Python, you do, or if you want to install it, use it, you do not need to pay anything. Okay, in IT we call it as an open source. Okay, in IT industry, what do you mean by open source? Open source is nothing but freely available in the market. Okay, Python is freely available in the market. Okay, there is no owner or someone actually to purchase it. Basically, it is open source, freely available in the market. Okay, if it is freely available in the market, what really happens? Okay, I will tell you one thing. People generally say that Python has got a library, basically more libraries when compared to other programming languages. Why? Library is nothing but set of code already built in, basically. Okay. So just keep in mind what are libraries. Libraries are nothing but piece of code or certain piece of code that is going to give some output basically that was already there as part in the form of libraries basically. Okay. Why? Okay, if it is open source, what happens? Exactly. If everyone can, if it is a open source is freely available. If something is free, what really happens? Everyone who is interested in programming generally download and install it and try something new. Correct? Okay. So what really happens if they write something, whatever the code that I have already written basically by people, what generally happens? There are high chances of having a libraries basically. If there are more number of people using Python, what really happens? They will try something new. Okay, something new. For example, I want to do some image processing basically. Okay, I'll write some code on it, and what I will do, I will make it as a library. So what really happens basically, if it is freely available in the market, everyone will download it, install it, and do something. And if that is working fine, then generally what happens, we'll make it as a library basically. Okay. What is the use of library? Let's say I want to start something on image processing basically. Okay, so if there is an already existing piece of code, what really happens, I will install that library and on top of it I will write my own code. Correct. So what really happens, it is making my life easy. There is someone who already written something on image processing basically on this and made it as a library basically. I mean, there is certain piece of code that is already there. What happens, it helps me to reduce the time, right? Correct. So I do not need to code and write it from the beginning basically. I'll make use of that particular library basically. So what is the major advantage of Python is, first, syntax. Second is open source. If it is open source, what happens? There are lot number of people will make use of it, and what happens when more number of people start using it, we will get more number of library. Library is nothing but what? Existing code, set of code basically. Okay, for if you want to do something, we'll write some code, right? So what really happens, I will go ahead and install that particular already existing code and write on top of it basically. Okay, so that is the reason. So what really happens, it saves my time. Correct. Okay, that is the advantage of the Python basically. What is the major advantage is syntax, and it is open source. Since it is an open source, there are a lot of libraries available in the Python basically. Okay, so what really happens, if there are a lot of libraries available, I do not need to write the code again from the scratch. Correct. So that is the thing why it is becoming popular. Clear? Okay. Now I'll just tell you one more simple example. Okay. Let's say I have, okay, let's say Kelly Technology. Okay, why industries? If you take a mid-level IT industries, most of the mid-level IT industries are making use of Python basically. Why? Why? Because, tell me why. Because if you take anything, data science, if you take DevOps, data science, machine learning, anything, if you take, Python has got a certain libraries basically. Okay, if you take any diversification, like if you take machine learning, DevOps, if you take web technology, whatever you take in Python, Python has got a lot number of libraries available in it basically. So what really happens when it has got lot number of libraries basically, there are lot number of library means what really happens basically, so time taken to write the code will reduce basically. Correct. So that is a one major advantage if you take it in the perspective of Python basically in terms of industries basically. Okay, let's, I'll give one simple example. Let's say Kelly Technologies. Okay, Kelly Technologies has got one project. Okay, Kelly Technologies doesn't have any of the programmers basically. Okay, web programmers. So they have won a project from More Supermarket to build a some web, I mean e-commerce basically, e-commerce website basically. Okay, now, they do not have any programmers, they have resources, but they are in different stream. They are like ETL developers, database developers, they have got it. They do not have any web developers basically. Okay. What Python technologies, Kelly Technologies thinks. So they have done some POC and came to conclusion that whatever the requirements given by a client can be done both in Python or Java or in any other languages basically. So what is preferable language for Kelly Technologies basically? Python. Why? First thing is budget. Okay, because it is a mid-level company and it doesn't have much budget allocation for this particular project. Basically, one thing, if you want to make use of Java or if you want to use C Sharp or something, we need to buy a license from. If it is a C Sharp, we need to go and buy a license from Microsoft because Microsoft has developed the C Sharp basically. Okay, but coming to Python, what happens? It is open source. We do not need to buy any license. That is one thing. What is the second thing? Okay, second thing is, let's say Kelly Technologies doesn't have any resources on Python or Java basically. Okay, but if you want to onboard them into project, what they want, they need to train them. Correct. So which one is easy? Python basically. So if you want to make them learn Java, it will take 4 months. Okay, but Python will take only 2.5 months basically. Okay, so generally what happens? Will the company spend much time on giving trainings? No, they want to onboard them as soon as possible. Okay, first thing is again same thing. Since it is easy, it will take less time basically to learn basically. Okay, first another thing is open source. And one more advantage is what happens? Time taken to complete the project in Python is less when compared to other programming language. Why? Because there are already existing libraries available in Python and hence we can make use of already existing code to complete our project basically. Okay, so these are the advantages of a Python basically. Okay, right. Now, okay. So what are the different versions available in Python? There are two versions available in Python basically. Okay. Okay. Actually, who invented this Python? Guido van Rossum basically. He is the father of Python basically. Okay. He thought of implementing it. Idea came into his mind in 1980s. Okay. When he actually started the coding, developing the Python 1989 basically. And first version was released in October 16, 2000 basically. Which version? Python 2. Okay, there is no version called Python 1, there is a version called Python 2 and there are subversions 2.1, 2.2, something like that. Okay, and later on they have released Python 3 on December 3, 2008 basically. Okay, and the latest version is 3.9 or 3.9 something. Okay, that is subversion basically. Okay, tell me what is the meaning of version? What do you mean by version? Let's say mobile. Okay, we have OS. Okay, iOS 14. We have different operating system versions, right? What generally it is? They say that we have updated like latest iOS version is 15. Generally, they say right. What actually happens with the version? Exactly. Whatever the bugs that were there in the previous version will get resolved, and also what happens? New features will get added basically. Correct? So that is the version. Like if you take any programming language or any other technology or any, if you see or if you listen the version, what do you mean by it? Version is nothing but they keep on updating something in the next versions basically. Okay. So that is the case with the Python also basically. Okay, right. Now, as part of this course, okay, if you want to see what are the course content you want to see, I'll show you. Okay, so if you go to Google and say Kelly Technologies, you will get the PDF, basically Python PDF. Okay, okay, if you can go through it. Okay, all this basically. Okay, we have like advanced topics like multi-threading. Okay, NumPy, pandas, object-oriented programming, exception handling. All those we are going to discuss basically. Okay, apart from core. Okay, will not take much of your time. Okay. People generally say that core, right? Core Python, core Java. What do you mean by core Python or core Java? What is core? Basics. Okay, basics. Okay, okay. If you someone says as core Python or advanced Python or what is this? If you see core, core means we are going to cover all the necessary building blocks that are used to write a, let's say you know the logic. For example, okay, tell me the logic for even numbers. I'll give 4. Tell me if it is even number or not. Even number. How you are going to say that it is an even number? If it is divisible by 2, when we are saying that it is divisible, when it is going, if it divides and remainder is 0. Okay, if it is remainder is 0, then it is a even number. Okay, if you go ahead and divide a particular number with 2, and if it is a remainder is 0, it is a even number. Okay, how we can implement, you know the logic, but what we are going to learn as part of how to implement this particular logic in practically in Python based. Okay, so what are all necessary things that are needed to write a logic is called a code. Okay, for example, I will quickly show you how we can go ahead and write it basically. Okay, right, now I'll go ahead and say 10. Okay, I want to know if it is divisible by 2 or no. Okay. What we need to do, we need to know what is the thing that is going to use for division. Okay, so division operator is actually a percentage. What is this called? Operator. Okay, we have different operators. Okay, this is one concept. Okay, arithmetic operator, logical operators, and all these are actually a operators. Okay, among arithmetic operators, percentage is the one which is used to do the division basically. Okay, so now I need to go ahead and divide by 2. What happens if I go ahead and divide it by 2? We'll go ahead and get 0. Okay, simply giving a 0 doesn't print us it is even or not. What I need to do, I need to compare it. What if it is going to divide with 2? I need to go ahead and compare it with 0. Correct. If it is divisible by 2, what is the remainder? We will get 0. If 0 is equal to 0 only, then we have to go ahead and say it is an even number. Okay. Now, it is going to say true, because when I go ahead and divide 10 with 2, I got 0, and this 0 is equal to 0 basically. Correct? Okay. But still it is going to say true, but it is not printing as a even number. Okay. What is the thing? I have to go ahead and say condition. What is that? If this is true, then go ahead and print it is an even number. Okay, so when this print will get executed only if this is true. Okay, so now if I go ahead and run it, what happens? It is going to say that it is an even number. Now if I go ahead and say 9, 9 divided by 2, we will get remainder as 1. Is 1 equal to 0? No. So it is going to give us what? False. So this will not get executed, because if condition will only get this block of code will go only executed when this condition is true. Now if you go ahead and say, it is not going to give us anything. So I'm just giving very simple example. So what we have for writing a simple even number logic, what we have used, we have used operator. With two operators we have used. What is that? Comparison operator and a division operator. And we also use the if condition. Right? So as part of core Python, we are going to see other building blocks, basically if block. Okay, we have seen if, we are going to use for, else, data types. Okay, there are other operators, basically. Okay, there are lot number of basics that we need to learn to write your logic in a program. Okay, that is the thing with the core Python. As part of advanced, we will go ahead and see some advanced parts, basically. Okay, so not only in Python, any programming language you take, basics are the very important. If you do not understand the basics, then it's of no use. Okay, that is the reason why I generally stress. Okay, I generally take lot number of examples for big cons. I mean, for core Python, basically. Okay, like till functions, right? If you know how to write a functions in Python, basically, then you are good with the programming language, basically. Okay, most important things are loops, for loops, while loops, if conditions, and logical thinking. Okay, if you do not know logical thinking, and if you know the concepts, then it's of no use. Okay, you need to understand how to implement your logic by making use of existing components in a Python. Clear? Okay, so that thing that we are going to cover. Okay, what is the outcome of this course? By end of this course, you will be, if you concentrate and do the regular, I mean practice, then by end of this course you will be able to write any logic using a Python. Okay, so that is the outcome of this particular course. Clear? Okay, so generally, okay, now coming to the regular classes. How regular classes happens? 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Monday to Friday. If needed, I am going to take the classes on Saturday also. Okay, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Okay, 45 minutes will be session, 10 to 15 minutes will be a doubt clarification. Okay, so this is how generally works. And whatever the examples that I do take, right, are real-time examples for each and every topic. Okay, so we are going to email, or we are going to send it, all the examples whatever we discuss in the class will send to your email or a WhatsApp, basically. Okay, and after completion of each